Hello, Cayden. Thanks for allowing me to be part of your class. I'll be happy to answer some of your questions.
Hi, Bud. Thanks for setting aside your precious time to share with the investors in Singapore and in Asia about your wisdom in investing. Now, I understand that you started off your career as a medical doctor. So, how did you get started in value investing then?
From 1990 to 1997, I had a small private medical practice in Valparaiso, Indiana, and there was a lot of competition in that town for medical doctors, and I nearly went bankrupt. So I resolved to learn more about business, and I went down to the bookstore to decide which book I was going to read. And at that time, there were two good books. One was a book about a short history of financial euphoria by John Kenneth Galbraith, and another one called Buffett, The Making of an American Capitalist by Roger Lowenstein. And I went back and forth, and finally I decided to read the book about the individual, Mr. Warren Buffett, who had done it himself. And he was not an academic, he was a practitioner. And that book hooked me onto value investing, and I started to buy a few stocks, and I resolved to go to business school, and I went to did my MBA studies at a local college called Purdue University Calumet in northwest Indiana in the city of Hammond. And during that time, in the last semester, we were allowed to do an elective research study, and I did mine on behavioral finance. The area that I became very interested in was what I called successful practitioner framing. And a couple guys named Tversky and Kahneman had done research, which resulted in a book called Prospect Theory. And that's how I became very interested in behavioral finance. So in my studies, I was looking for the formula, or I was looking for the process that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger had developed over the course of their investing careers.
I see. Most of us know that Warren Buffett had popularized value investing since Benjamin Graham's era. So, in your perspective, how do you think Warren's investing style has changed over the years?
That one's easy. In the early days, Warren Buffett, as a teenager, was basically a speculator who liked to play with charts. And at the age of 19, he read a book called The Intelligent Investor by Professor Benjamin Graham. And he went to study under Graham. He also worked for Graham briefly. And in his early letters, when he started his Buffett partnerships, I did a study of the text, and I was looking for the word frequency. And if you do a word frequency analysis on the early Buffett letters and compare them to the letters of the Berkshire Hathaway Company, I compared, I think it was 1956 to about 1960, somewhere in there, and then compared the letters from 77 till about 2002. In the early days, the word market came up much more frequently, and in the later letters, the word business comes up much more frequently than market. So that told me one thing. It told me that here was an individual who, in his early career, had a fairly high market focus, and as he gained experience, and as he met and grew with Charlie Munger. By the way, Charlie Munger is the one who told him, hey, let's go for the wonderful business. And they learned from business mistakes. I think this transformed his thinking, and he started to think more about high quality businesses and less about quantitative bargains. Now, in more recent years, because of the size of their company, they are forced to look at much larger businesses. But I think if you look at his more recent writings, it's definitely more towards a high quality business focus.
My third question is, if there are some important key qualitative criteria in selecting a value-oriented company to invest, what would this be? And specifically, how can we identify these criteria in the financial reports? Can you give us an example to illustrate?
I think it really comes down to this. In my view, the most important thing when you're looking at a company is to think of it as simply as a business. And think to yourself and say to yourself, is this a company that has products or services that are highly respected in terms of brand? And after you get through that hurdle, ask yourself the question, is this a business that has weathered multiple types of economic conditions? In other words, has it weathered a recession? Has it weathered high competition? And is it producing a high return on equity? And I think if you look at my book, The Four Filters Invention of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, I pretty much summarize what I learned from studying Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger in that book.
Thanks, Bud. The next question is, as a layman retail investor, if there are critical quantitative criteria to look at, what would these criteria be in terms of perhaps ratios and numbers in the financial statements? Do give a couple of examples to illustrate.
For me, the most important criteria is free cash flow, and that means the free cash that's being produced by the business after it's paid all its current liabilities and its current debts, including taxes. I think that's the most important criteria to look at. Is it producing real cash? The next thing I look at is how much debt does it carry? And I don't like companies that have to carry much debt, so I tend not to look at companies that have a debt-to-equity ratio higher than 0.5 or 50%. And then the next one is what is the net profit margin of the business, which will tell you how efficient it is at producing a profit. And if you're into ratios and numbers, I think take a look at Scott Thompson's book, The Art and Science of Value Investing. But I think I'd like to leave it at that, at these criteria for now: free cash flow, debt to equity, and net profit margin.
Question number 5. Now, after we have selected a company, the difficult part will be in valuation. Some fund managers said that different valuation methods are required for different types of companies, but somehow not much details were given. Can you share some of your thoughts about how to evaluate different types of companies and what valuation methods to use?
I would say for the students who are new to valuation and you want to pretty much stay out of trouble, go with the discounted cash flow models of the free cash flow and learn those first. Now, if once you understand those, if you want to learn more about valuation, I usually recommend the books and the talks by Professor Aswath Damodaran. I'll spell his name for you. His first name is Aswath, Aswath, and his last name is Damodaran, Damodaran. And he's written several books about valuation, and he recently posted a talk he did at Google on YouTube, and the title of that talk is Valuation, 4 Lessons to Take Away. So valuation, 4 lessons to take away. Very good talk. I played it on my Chrome browser the other night, and I sped it up to 1.25. And I think this will give you some hint and some ideas on how to value growth companies that are not yet making the higher free cash flows. But he gives sufficient warnings on other factors to look at, and those are mentioned in my Four Filters book. Factors such as understand the business and its products, make sure it has some form of sustainable competitive advantage, make sure it has able and trustworthy managers, and then finally is the valuation estimation or the estimation of intrinsic value. But I think your students will learn a lot from watching that video by Professor Damodaran. I also have some videos posted up on YouTube, and they can view those on a channel called Budlab, Budlab.
During your journey of investing, can you share the biggest mistake that you have made and what have you learned?
Yes, my biggest mistake was probably not buying enough when I knew something was a tremendous high quality bargain, especially when USG was hammered down during the Great Recession. I knew at that point in time, I think this was around March of 2009, when the price got down to about $5. And I knew they were going to survive because Buffett already owned about 18% of the company, and he was lending them more money to get them through the Great Recession. And I should have really loaded up then. I think the price now is close to $30. The other great mistake was missing out on the growth of Apple. For me, when I look back at not fully appreciating Apple as a growth company with an enduring culture, in my mind I thought it was going to go down after Mr. Steve Jobs passed away. So I did not do my homework on that, so did not fully appreciate the growth potential of Apple. On the other hand, in this type of work, you should never knock yourself down for missed opportunities, because as Buffett says, there will always be other opportunities that will come along. But to answer your question, those are probably two of the big mistakes I've made.
I know you have written a couple of books. Can you just share which book is your favorite? Can you share some details about whichever book I picked that will help the retail investors in Singapore?
Yes, my best book is probably the second edition I finished last year, The Four Filters Invention of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, second edition. And this book will also be out shortly on Audible audiobook form for people who wish to listen to a professional narration of this book. It's in production right now. You see, in that book, which is based on my research on behavioral finance and reading all the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letters, I take the position that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger invented an investing formula or process that is very underappreciated by the business as well as the academic communities. And in my view, it is an amazing intellectual achievement, both in practical as well as behavioral finance. These filters are an important set of steps used by the world's greatest investors for finding high-quality investments. And what is unique about these filters is that in 4 simple steps, they have found a way to combine 3 qualitative steps with 1 quantitative step. Your students will remember that Benjamin Graham is known for finding ways to estimate intrinsic value, and that is the 4th step, or the seek an estimated intrinsic value, which will give you a margin of safety. But the first 3 filters are contributions by both Buffett and Munger. Number 1 is understand the business and its products, or the economic understanding. Number 2 is you want a business with a sustainable and enduring type of competitive advantage. And that really means is that you have repeat customers, or customers that keep coming back and buying more. That's what the meaning of sustainability in competitive advantage, because they'll choose your product instead of competitors. And then, of course, step number 3, you want able and trustworthy managers. You don't want able and untrustworthy managers, because the untrustworthy manager may steal from you. So that's why those 4 steps are so unique. And I think when you combine all 4 steps, you really increase your probability of finding the right type of business to invest in.
I really appreciate your time in this interview. If some of the investors here want to follow some of your works, is there a website that they can go to?
I would say anyone who wants to read my most recent stuff, just Google my name, Bud Labitan, B-U-D space, and then Labitan, L-A-B-I-T-A-N. And generally my writings will show up somewhere on a Google search. And then there are some other websites that we belong to, like the ISVI on Facebook, which stands for the International Society of Value Investors. But generally, I think a Google search will will help people find me.
By the way, Bud, we will be organizing a World Value Investing Fest 2015 in July in Singapore. Can you share something important why any retail investor should attend this?
Yes, I can. In my view, value investing is, for many of us, it becomes a passion and it's a constant learning challenge. So if you like to learn new things, this is a very good hobby and quest to get into. This is because it's a constant search for understandable first-class businesses with enduring competitive advantages, accompanied by first-class managers, and you're looking for that bargain price. So for me, it's a four-step process, and it's a constant challenge, but it's a happy feeling when you find that type of business to invest in.
Last thing, by the way, in case you do not know, it's Singapore's 50th birthday this year. Would you like to say something to the Singaporeans and the retail investors over here?
Happy birthday, Singapore. You are doing a lot of things the right way, and I would say keep up the good works, and I hope that your nation will share some of your best practices and best ideas with the rest of the world. And why do I say this? I believe in the old saying by the late Zig Ziglar, who was a motivational speaker in the United States. And Zig used to say, you can get anything in the world you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. So in this global economy, it's important to keep these things in mind. And I think Singapore is off to a tremendous start and something that your nation should be very proud of. And I tip my hat to you and salute your whole nation and your people for being so productive in raising the standards of living for your citizens. And I hope this is something that you can share with the rest of the world. So happy birthday and many more happy birthdays to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bud, for your precious time. I'm sure I'll catch up with you soon in Omaha next year. See you.